Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Dr. Michelle Maidenberg, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. We're super excited to have you here. I'm super excited about our time together. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about what you're working on today and then anything for tomorrow you want to talk about, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for being here. So where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
Yeah. Good old Brooklyn. Yes.
What a cool place to be born. Did you grow up there?
I don't know about that, but
No, it's a cool place. Brooklyn's cool.
it depends what part of Brooklyn, by the way.
About everybody I've talked to has told me it's pretty cool. I was not born there, but I heard it's cool.
It is. It's cool now, but it wasn't cool when I was born there.
Oh my goodness. So did you grow up there?
I grew up, I have a little bit of I would say a childhood has a lot of adversity. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was born in Brooklyn. I was in between, I would say kind of the five boroughs, in between like Queens, Brooklyn, Long Island, etc. So I went to 5 different elementary schools.
Wow. You did move around.
I did. I'm telling you. Yeah. My parents divorced when I was 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yes, so there was a lot of moving around between my mother and father and etc., but mostly between Queens, Brooklyn, Long Island, like those 3 areas. Yeah. So I went to one school, I went to 1st and 2nd grade, another school for 3rd grade, another school for 4th and 5th grade, another school for 6th grade, and another school for 7th and 8th grade.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So where did you go to high school?
I went to one high school in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when I finally settled. Yeah, is when I got to high school. Yes.
I got you.
And guess what? I promised myself that when I have kids, they are not moving anywhere. So my kids literally from kindergarten through high school went to the same school. Yes. Every one of them.
That was rewarding.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah. Well, because in terms of the continuity, I just remember what it was like to always be the new kid.
Yeah.
It was, I have to say, it definitely afforded me with a lot of skills. I'm a chameleon. You could kind of put me in somewhere and I'll find my way. But like being a kid and growing up in that, it was really hard. And the place that I see it the most, interestingly enough, is in my academics. Like there's big gaps definitely in my education. I know nothing about geography, literally. My spelling is atrocious. Thank God for our PCs, but I see it. And what was so interesting, I was just talking to somebody about this. I am a Psychology Today blogger. I wrote 2 books. I'm thinking about a 3rd one now. So I'm a professional writer. But I have to tell you, I haven't, excuse me, I didn't find that talent until a couple of years ago. Yeah, because I'm a lot more articulate when I write than when I speak. And I know that about myself because of these gaps in my education. So it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, I've learned so much. So when I finally found this hidden talent, like it's so exciting to see the process and the journey because I'm like, how did that happen? Like I didn't even know that was there.
So you've evolved a lot. Because I think you're incredibly articulate.
Oh, thank you. That's kind.
No, I'm serious. I'm literally stating what I believe to be a fact. I think you're incredibly articulate. Of course, I talk to a lot of people. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you really are impressive. I think part of that is the adversity that you had growing up. because it gave you some strength. It gave you some confidence that you have now and some
Mhm.
determination that you have now
Oh, yeah.
that, that helped, I think.
Oh, for sure. Like, I definitely live by thinking or viewing myself as a survivor,
Yeah.
not as a victim at
Right.
all. Like, I have immense gratitude for my history, literally, because I know that it definitely made me into the person I am. And I use that with my own kids. A lot of parents have difficulty seeing their children struggle.
Mhm.
I don't. Like, when my kids go through adversity or they have a challenge, I literally let them sit in it, and I don't have a problem with them working through challenges because I
Mhm.
know when you come out the other end, the value of that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways that I see it.
Mhm.
However, like, here's an example. Sometimes I could also sense my compassion,
Mhm.
right? That I could be at times, and again, I'm so aware of it now because I've been doing so much personal work, but I could go into the space of being discompassionate
Mhm.
because, like, I went through it. Why can't they?
Right.
Like, right? Like, this is the way to do it. This is how
Mhm.
you gain strength and power and, confidence, right? Like, so instead of being like, gosh, this is hard for you. I see how you're struggling, like, etc. Right? I'll be
Mhm.
like, right? Because that was me.
Mhm.
And that's not always so helpful. So I have
Yeah.
to really be in tune with that sometimes because that slips in there
Mhm.
at various times. So I see how these elements, could definitely turn. In terms of the articulation, it's so interesting that you say that because my dad used to say to me, because my spelling, like I said, is like so atrocious. He'll be like, "Where did you get your PhD from?" Like he'll make fun of me. Or I have a friend now, and I always my pronunciation of things and sometimes my grammar is off just
Mhm.
because, and he makes fun of me all the time. He's like, Michelle, it's not regards, it's regard, or
Mhm.
regarding. And I'm like, you know, and then he's like, oh, but I ask people to correct me because I actually want to learn from it. But
Mhm.
I do, I constantly make these little tiny mistakes, or even in my writing, I
Mhm.
catch edits sometimes and I laugh at myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
yeah,
think about this for a second, though.
yeah.
You are a lot better at grammar now than you were 2 books ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
third book that you're going to do, and the fourth
Yeah.
book and the fifth book, because you and I both know this is the beginning of an avalanche. You're going to be writing books from now on, right? And in a few years, we're going
Uh,
to talk to you, and it's going to be book number 10. Okay.
uh,
So
yeah.
I'm serious. I'm seeing it. I'm
Okay.
flat out seeing it. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm this okay. So let me ask you this. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
I was very resourceful,
Mhm.
extremely resourceful. And I always found people to show me attention. And
Mhm.
it was usually like an older woman and it's interesting, my book I dedicate to the women warriors in my life.
Mhm.
And those are the people that mentored me. Like, those are the women who, two of my grandmothers are in there because they
Mhm.
are definitely. I unfortunately lost like one of my closest friends. Literally, we were best friends. She died at age 99.
Mhm.
Yeah, she was 99 years old, but like she was like, again, she would call me her best friend,
Mhm.
you know. So I had women in my life of all different ages, and I have friends of all different ages.
Yeah.
So influential, there's so many people, who love on such a deep level and I've connected to over the years.
Mhm.
So I can't I would, I have to say my grandmothers,
Mhm.
they were both Holocaust survivors. And talk about adversity and trauma. I mean, most of their families were murdered,
Mhm.
and they both, like, my one of my grandmothers was on the line, and they basically split them, concentration camp and death chambers, like
Mhm.
literally the right. And she because of her age, she was a teenager, she got
Mhm.
to work instead of being brought to the gas chambers,
Mhm.
and where most of her other family went to the gas chambers.
Mhm.
So we're talking about, and I've been hearing stories since I'm a little girl about like the trauma and all of that. So, and I think that's definitely cultivated me into who I am today. Just hearing these stories and the empathy I felt for them and the ability to be in tune and to be compassionate in a way that I don't think I would have done otherwise.
Yeah.
And the other thing too about both of them, especially one of them, I mean, they don't make people like they do back then. Like
Mhm.
she literally, I don't want to call her a martyr, but she lived for other people. Like she would give you the shirt off her back. Like she would
Mhm.
cook and she would give out to the whole neighborhood. She never cared about material items. She lived in the moment and she was
Mhm.
so warm and loving. And like I said, I just find them to be so incredibly strong and loving.
Yeah.
They had issues in terms of their intimacy, obviously because of the war, but you felt it. Like when you were with them, you felt loved. You
Mhm.
knew it. You felt it in your gut. The way they would look at you and the smile that they had on their face when you walked in the door.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. I mean,
And
yeah,
and
I
you
hope that I literally, I hope that I provide that for people. I hope that they feel like my love. Like
Mhm.
if I could be an ounce, it's making me like very emotional.
Mhm.
If I could be an ounce of what they were,
Mhm.
literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing. You watched them love on people. Okay.
Yeah.
All that
Yeah.
food that she made and
Yeah.
gave to other people, that was
Yes.
love.
Totally.
And
Totally.
it's not what people say, it's what
No,
they do.
totally.
And it's
Yes.
you witnessing that happening, okay? Because what was most important to her was not herself. What was most important to her was what she
Yes.
did for everybody else. And,
Yeah.
if you dug into it at all, you
Yes.
would find that a lot of that came from the experience that she had
Completely.
growing up, right, in such a
Yeah.
horrible, horrible situation, and
Yes.
then not being a part of that. In other words, eventually being able to escape from that.
Yes.
I mean, people talk about the death chambers, they talk about the concentration camps. Concentration camps were no walk in the park. Okay. They watched human suffering like there was no tomorrow. They watched people literally starve to death.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the fact that she in her life, the fact that she fed people is her way of counteracting that. Okay. It's her way of
Completely.
loving on people to counteract the hate that she experienced. And it was her way of paying it forward.
Yes. Yeah.
And think about the impact that she had on you.
Totally inspiring. Like,
Yeah.
and that's why I got so emotional. Like, and
Yeah.
again, I haven't talked about this in quite a while. That's why it really like, yeah, it kind of
That's
really
why we
got to
do
me.
this.
Yeah.
Why we do this.
Oh, completely, completely. It's so inspiring. Like I
Mm.
said, like I wish I could be an ounce, literally an ounce of the way she is, and for a long time, because of my childhood and the way I grew up, I saw myself as, because of my thinking,
Mhm.
I thought of myself, or the perception I had of myself is that I have a slight meanness to me.
Mhm.
Like there's kind of a mean part.
Mhm.
And I see myself so differently today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Just
wasn't
because.
mean, it was determined.
No, well, it was determined, but I was in survival mode.
Mhm.
I was as a child. I literally was in survival mode. I felt seriously, fearful of my safety. I mean, it came down to that, as simple as that.
Mhm.
When our basic needs are not taken care of sometimes, right? I had to make sure that I was independent and I had to make sure that I was like, yeah, taking care of myself, especially emotionally more so than anything.
Mhm.
But I was in protective mode. I didn't have time to like breathe. I didn't have
Mhm.
time to like just let things be. Like, no. Then I wouldn't have survived. So
Mhm.
I found that a lot of my mean thoughts and feelings or my anger and rage, which made me feel powerful, right? And it made me feel in control was inauthentic. Like
Mhm.
that's not real sense of control.
It's a
A real
wall.
sense of, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I've worked and I continue working on this incessantly.
And by the way, this is an important lesson for people that are listening to this
Yeah.
podcast. This is an important lesson. When people are angry and fierce and
Yeah.
in beast mode and all that kind of stuff, a lot of times it's because they're trying to protect that vulnerability that they have that they
Yes.
are not willing to show, okay? Because they've built a wall over that. And their protective mechanism over that wall, it's almost like a sentry that's on
Mhm.
a wall that's defending the castle, okay?
Yep.
And that defense of that castle, those arrows, those, bullets, those, right? That firing is the
Mhm.
anger part, okay? And what's behind that massive wall that's being protected is somebody who's really vulnerable and they're scared and they have this whole myriad of emotions that they feel like are weakness, right?
Mm.
And they're
Yeah.
not willing to allow people in to see that. So when
But
people take people on face value or at face value, right? I would submit to you that's one of the worst things they could possibly do because it's not you that they're angry with. It's
yeah.
not, they're pointing their fire at you, right? But it's not you they're angry with.
No.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everybody in the world to back off because you're getting too close to the wall. Right? And they're afraid you're going to have a key to get in the door. God forbid, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's incredibly important that people understand that. And I think it's incredibly important that they understand that your grandmothers, both of them, from what they saw, from what they experienced, from what is constantly playing in their head, okay? Their solution to that is to love on people. They they were submitted to the worst kind of evil and hate on the planet.
Yeah.
And yet their solution to that was not to be evil and hateful. Their solution to that was to love on people as much as they possibly could.
Mhm. Yeah.
That tells
Yeah.
you a lot about human nature, and it tells you a lot about how people inherently are
Mhm.
good,
Oh, completely.
that they
Worthy.
can come from
Always
something like
worthy.
that. You came from a childhood of adversity, right?
Yeah.
And you took that and turned it into, I'm going to make sure my kids have a stable upbringing. I'm
Yes.
going to, right? That's
Yeah.
your way of loving on them from
Mhm.
the adversity that you felt and the anger and the hurt and all that. You turned that around. And now when
Yeah.
your kids go through adversity, you know better than anybody what's on the other side. And part of that came from your grandmothers.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you saw what they dealt with and how they handled it.
And it's breaking the cycle of intergenerational trauma. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
yeah, and,
Absolutely.
there's 2 things which, like, really, I would say, exemplifies what we're talking about, and it was so
Mhm.
interesting. Just this past week, I had, she's actually a colleague because 'cause I've done, like, supervision with her, but now I'm actually treating her.
Mhm.
So and she's a therapist too. So she said to me, we had a conversation and again, it was done very respectfully and etc. But she said to me, she said, I noticed something different about you. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I feel like you're softer.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, that's so interesting. And she said, yeah. She said, I remember we were in a supervision group together and, you know, you're so smart and sometimes kind of the skills better than the leader, but when you kind of sometimes when you approached it, I was worried what was going to happen.
Mhm.
She said, but now, like when I'm interacting with you, I perceive you to be so different. And I was like, I have to say, I was so taken aback by that because one of the things that I'm working on in my own journey is really connecting and tapping into my more feminine side. Because with
Mhm.
aggression and with rage, there's more of like, again, this more masculine side that comes
Mhm.
out, right? It's repressive, it's aggressive, it's, all of those, kind of inclinations. But but she noticed it. Like she
Mhm.
said it to me and I was like blown away by that.
Mhm.
Like I don't have to be angry. I could be my authentic self. I could be nurturing. I could be compassionate. I could be vulnerable.
Mhm.
and I could be okay. And I think, and the other thing that's come up, which has been so fascinating, is in regards to relationships.
Mhm.
I think like informative relationships, and I notice this more and more. I have very, very, kind of connected relationships, very deep relationships, very intimate relationships. But I, tended to gravitate, especially with men, towards guys who would get angry for having feelings.
Mhm.
Like I would express a disappointment or express my feeling about something, and then they would get angry at me for being disappointed.
Mhm.
Right? Again, that's somebody who can't meet your emotional needs, which
Mhm.
is my core wound is, emotional neglect.
Mhm.
So now it's so interesting. Like I connect to people who are nurturing and who don't get angry at me for having a feeling, but actually are interested and curious to know more about it, or they're more compassionate. Or like if somebody, and I always said this, if somebody just put their hand on my shoulder and said, "What's the matter? What's going on for you?"
Mhm.
It diffuses everything. And I'm able to be like, literally, I snap out of my trigger and I'm
Mhm.
like, whoa, I'm not that little girl. Like I could actually have a conversation. I don't have to be angry. And then I could express myself in a respectful, like, connected way. And it's amazing,
Mhm.
that your whole it's also changed my neural networks. It's changed my reactivity. It's changed my impulsivity, where
Mhm.
literally sometimes now it's crazy. Like I'm used to reacting a certain way and I don't. And then I'm like I'm confused because I'm
Mhm.
like, how come I didn't get angry? What happened? You know, like I literally have to say, like, are you okay? And then I
Mhm.
laugh because I'm like, how cool is that I'm actually changing my physiology? It's like on a neurocognitive level, it's on like a physiological level, it's on an emotional level. And I'm like, yes. So yeah, when I see these changes, I get like so excited.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
In the past, when you would get angry,
hmm
was it your standards?
Part of it, yes, part of it would be expectations. So part of the way I controlled my life, as a kid, because if you feel out of control, what
Mhm.
do we do in order to gain stability and safety? Right? We have to control our environment because that's the
Mhm.
only thing we can control.
Mhm.
We can't control adults in our lives. We can't control situations. And also, as kids, we're always blameful. We always blame ourselves for everything
Mhm.
because
True.
we don't have the sophistication emotionally and in our neurobiology to process things in a fundamentally like sophisticated way, right? Like as adults do. So when we misconstrue a lot of information. And if you kind of think about experiences you had as a kid, if you do real processing, you'll recognize that your perception about it was way off.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. So, yeah, so I definitely recognize in my personal work and just in my interactions that, the anger was really a way to control my environment
Mhm.
and an inauthentic way of feeling strong and feeling stable.
Mhm.
So I catch myself like, and I really, what I go into, and I understand where that comes from, so I'll say to myself, how old is that?
Mhm.
And I'll be able to tap into a time in my life when I felt that way.
Mhm.
It happened to me this morning, actually. It happened to me this morning where I was feeling kind of a little down and sad. And I was like, what do I need right now? And it was so interesting. What I needed was I needed to hear, I love you.
Mhm.
And the person that I wanted to hear it from, I wasn't quite hearing it from. Right. So I felt I literally had a gush of emotion. I started like getting very tearful and upset, and I was like, stop. How old is that?
Mhm.
And part of what came out of my process in my therapy in the past couple of weeks is I had this was so subconscious, like
Mhm.
and unconscious. I had this memory of my great uncle when I was a little girl gave me, he used to have a toy company.
Mhm.
He brought over this teddy bear. And
Mhm.
I remember night after night hugging this teddy bear and crying
Mhm.
and feeling lonely as a child. Like this is what came up very recently. Like I
Mhm.
don't know why this just came up. I was ready to kind of tackle it, right? And right away, like when I had this feeling of like I need to hear I love you, whatever, it was like me as that little girl.
Mhm.
It wasn't me today. I know I'm loved.
Mhm.
I unequivocally, no, I'm loved. I have people who love me. I know it. And I love myself. I don't even need anyone else's love. I love myself. I feel good in my body. I feel good in my human. And like once I tapped into that, I literally, like I said, I had this like strong emotional intense reaction. And then I was able to be like, I am loved. And it would be nice to hear. So I have compassion for that part of me that needs to hear it. But like, I'm okay. And it was amazing. Like I literally felt better. I felt like myself, my adult self, not my little self.
It's a skill set.
Yeah. So it's all the time, like, really kind of, it's the openness to see yourself. I can't say that enough, because our mind and our brain is wired to avoid discomfort and danger. So we're constantly, I did a TED talk called Circumventing Emotional Avoidance. Like it's all about avoiding our emotions because they're too painful. They're too painful in our body. They're too painful in our minds. So we're constantly on this like looping cycle of avoiding. And it's not until you could really look at yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever shows up, because we're human and we're imperfect. But expectations, that's huge. That comes in a lot. And when you have childhood adversity, you always have expectations. Always. Yeah. And you also kind of they're adaptations. Every one of us has adaptations. What does that mean? It's our survival skills. What helped us survive? Whatever adversity we experienced. And there's like little T's and there's big T's, right? There's little traumas, whether it was a father who, was very strict and dictatorial, right? Whether it's a mom who was overbearing, those could be good things, and they are, but you still get impacted by them. That's just life. We're impacted because of our emotionality, because of the way we're wired, because of our physiology, because of the way we're socialized, and 1,001 reasons. Yes.
Yeah. It's true. It's absolutely true. So question for you.
Yes.
In high school, what was your favorite subject?
High school, favorite subject.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.